I think this is Masterclass number 10, I think. I started in August. I'm not very good at maths. But yeah, just want to say huge welcome to Andreas Saag from Sweden.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Andreas. And huge thanks to everyone for joining us tonight. So tonight's session is a little bit different. It's going to be focused mainly on Andreas's composing, because Andreas has recently composed a soundtrack for a full computer game, which is, I think, quite impressive. I was very impressed. And yeah, so just want to kick off as I normally do by sort of a little bit of background information on Andreas. Andreas can also probably tell me more than I can about him. So, but Andreas really came to prominence, I felt, in the early 2000s. Is that right, Andreas? When you were doing stuff as Swell Session?
Yeah, I was 20 years old and kind of straight out of high school, and just went with my demo to some guy who had a record label, and it sounded like Aphex Twin, and they were releasing that kind of music. And then he said, "No, let's do some jazzy stuff. Have you heard Jazzanova?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have. I can do that." And so it was actually sort of he asked for jazzy club music, and that's what happened.
Yeah, so it was quite arbitrary, actually, that you ended up getting involved in jazzy dance music, wasn't it? Because, yeah.
I was already playing jazz, and I was listening to Swedish radio, to this radio show where they would play all kinds of club music. It was just that I was heavily into hard Swedish techno and warp, basically. So that was my thing in electronic music, and I had tried blending jazz and electronic music, but I was just not identifying myself as that yet.
Yeah. So just a little bit of background information. If you were sort of brought up and came through in Gothenburg, weren't you? Which is the second city in Sweden.
Yes.
And you were part of a sort of quite celebrated scene that was christened Gonkiberg, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And
Uh,
it was a lot of different people doing and getting some success at the same time, right?
yeah. So there was already, like, the label I approached. They had some jazzy artists, and those were the a little bit older guys that I had went to school with, and so I moved into this studio complex with them, and sort of there was only like a small, almost like a closet where I could make my music. So, and then I think I was the first one to get sort of some airplay on worldwide, just Peterson, and then the others followed after. So and then
Yeah. So
it
you had
became
the
a thing, and people, like, even people came to visit Gothenburg to find out, like, that we were just a bunch of kids and stuff. But it was fun times.
Yeah, because you had that sort of experience of being the guy and the kid in the broom cupboard who was
Yeah, yeah.
suddenly flying around the world. You said you were playing. What was it? You were playing in Japan very quickly after you had your sort of breakthrough, weren't you?
Like a few 1 or 2 months after releasing my first uh, single, then I got like a funnily worded Japanese email, and I always just thought it was some joke. But then, and that guy now runs Mew Music, so he sort of went into techno after that, but he was also really into jazzy stuff. So
Toshio Kawasaki.
that's the guy. So I toured Japan with him like twice, and many
Wow.
different cities also, which was really nice to see. Different.
So that time, Andreas, was the early 2000s, and I just wanted to sort of ask you about your sort of musical progression since then, because you've been through quite a lot of different sort of phases, haven't you? So
Yeah, you could say that. Basically, everything was really, like, went really well with the jazzy scene, and then it had sort of a dip around maybe 2005, six, and it was all of a sudden out of style, pretty much out of nowhere. And and I had released on the Swedish label called Hollow Records, and also I had released some more downtempo stuff on Jimster's label Free Range Records. So um, long story short, I kind of didn't. I released my Swell Session album on Free Range, and I had collaborated with a lot of artists from the broken beat and new jazz scene, and there was it, I think it was maybe 2007, and they were like, yeah, we should have released this 2 years ago, and now it's not the market for that, and that's what happened. So a lot of people liked it, and I got to tour Japan again, but it was just not really the same hype anymore. And then I had my then girlfriend. She lived in London, and I was at I was supposed to go to a co-op club night in at Plastic People, and there was just some angry note from IG Culture on the printed on the door. It was just like, "Fuck this," let's not never do this again, something like that. And then the next weekend, I was the Free Range guys. They asked me to join for I think it was could it have been Innervision's label party at Plastic People. So I found myself there, like watching a Henrik Schwartz live set where he was kind of looping a saxophone and putting a kick under it. Lots of young people there, equally as excited for that music as we had all been, a few years earlier for co-op, and then I sort of there and then thought to myself, I really love some deep house music as well, so I might as well try making that, because I'm already on one of the biggest labels for that, in Free Range Records. So
But Andreas, you'd started out on Samuel L. Sessions' label SLS, hadn't you? And that's like you were making
yeah,
kind of techno then, weren't you? So it sort of maybe was a bit full circle for you to go back to the
I,
four.
I wasn't like I wasn't a stranger to 4/4 music in that sense.
Yeah. So I just wanted to sort of give people a little bit of background on just me and Andreas's connection, really. That because obviously the people that I feature on How I Program, I always try and make sure that they're people that I know fairly well, because it really helps with the sessions, and it's also you know where you are, you kind of have an idea how it's going to go. But I heard about Andreas a lot through at Jazz Martin Iverson. He used to really big up Andreas to me. I didn't know Andreas at all, but he was always like, "Oh, Andreas is a genius," and like all that. And then me and Andreas ended up living together in Berlin, which was an experience, wasn't it, Andreas? It was, both of us were like new boys in Berlin, and like with our dreams, and it was actually quite a special time to share together, I think. You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. We had both released records and everything. So we weren't like fresh off the boat in that sense, but we just really were looking for a musical creative adventure in Berlin, and ended up living together. So yeah.
Yeah, and that was 2011. And just a postscript to the group is the apartment that we moved into. It is like etched into the Berlin dance music history, obviously unofficially, but we got it off Cats and Dogs, the because you knew them, the Polish production duo, and then Patrice Scott lived there for a while.
Yeah.
Rick Wade came and stayed for a while. DJ Spider lived there for a while. Manpower lived there after I left, didn't he?
Yeah.
So it was
The dog
bizarre, wasn't it?
was
That
there also for a while. So
yeah, there was so many people pass. It was actually really cool the way that our apartment, like people just passed through. There was like Basic Soul Unit would come along, or Hakeem Murphy, or Amir Alexander, or all you had the sort of Swedish people coming in, didn't you?
yeah. It was I always called it a music flat, basically. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to play a little track for everyone. So you have to listen to me and Andreas reminiscing teary-eyed about Berlin. I just think it's kind of background stuff. So yeah, I was going to play The Music in Her Eyes, which was kind of your breakthrough record, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it featured somebody on vocals that ended up being incredibly famous, right?
Yeah. And that was my first record, but also the first record that she was on. So, I could tell the story of like I was in music high school, and we played together in bands, and we had a live drum and bass trip hop band. This would have been in 98 or so. And at rehearsal, my friend, a drummer, he just brought his friend from school, and I had heard her sing, and I had trouble believing like she would be from his school, because he was really young. He was 15 or 16, and she was as well. And then she showed up, and was just this not so very big human being. And when she opened her mouth to sing, was just one of those things where you cannot believe that that voice is belonging to that person. She had an even deeper voice then, and we were super amazed and really happy that she wanted to join our band. So, and then when I started making music, I knew I wanted to feature her. And I think, that Giles Peterson, for example, wouldn't have been, half as interested in my music if it wasn't for her vocals, because nobody had heard them before. So I have her to
I was
thank.
going to say, does anyone know who we're talking about, by the way? Maybe? Can anyone hazard a guess? Okay. Have you heard of Little Dragon, the band? Yeah, so Andreas's first collaborator was, is it Yukimi?
Yukimi, yeah.
Yeah, so she went on to be the lead vocalist of Little Dragon. So that's quite random, isn't it?
Yeah, she was featured a lot on sort of new jazz or jazzy club music, whatever you want to call it. And like, she was a singer with Coop for a long time. And then, she just said to herself, I want to do my own thing, because all of this jazzy music is really nice, but it's not really me. And then she did her own thing, which I think turned out pretty cool. So,
Yeah. So shall we have a little blast of this track? Because it's an important track in your career, isn't it, Andreas?
Yeah, for sure.
I'll just do the old screen sharing thing. Give me a sec, folks. Hopefully you can see my awful Apple music player. Okay, so Music in Her... No, that's... Okay, this one. Everyone got... Yeah? Andreas, did you play the solo on the track?
I did, yeah. So that was kind of my thing. Was to like I found a Rhodes piano. I always played that Rhodes in all those bands that we had together. So I don't think I ever made a single swell session song without playing the Rhodes. That was sort of, and I knew how to play one solo, by Herbert Hancock. So that was kind of like all of my solos came from that one solo. So I knew how to play that style, but I wasn't really very versatile as a jazz pianist, but I could do that basically.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Yeah, and I mean, just wanted to sort of bring it forward a little bit to that you sort of you started, sort of doing these kind of quite high profile remixes, like of like really famous tracks. So the two that spring to mind are Rose Rouge by Saint Germain, and then also you did Hype Mango by Joy Orbison, and you managed to completely recontextualize those tunes. So
Yeah.
what and it was it was the Andreas Saag perspective, wasn't it?
Yeah, so it was both in 2009 where I was trying to sort of reinvent my sound to be more deep house and I just made some edits and then I thought, well, maybe I should send them to Giles and he played all of the edits I did, I think. So yeah, it was sort of became almost like a shortcut to get in the spotlight again a little bit. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's maybe I didn't really have that perspective at the time. I didn't feel like you were stepping on sacred ground because
It
that's
did,
the thing. I
it,
think
I didn't do the edits in order to make a shortcut, but it became that.
right. Okay, so that's a good tip for the group, Just remix a really famous track and you'll be everywhere,
The edits of famous tracks, it works every.
Yeah. So I was just going to stick on. I'll play. Is it all right if I play the Hype Mango one?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, just because that's quite an. I think that's. I mean, obviously the Rose Rouge one's wicked, but I think what you did with the Hype Mango one, it's quite a sort of. You really switched it to me,
Yeah,
So
and
I don't know if everyone's aware of Hype Mango. It was Joy Orbison's breakthrough track. It was his first release, and it was on Hot
just
Flush.
I thought it was super cool, and I just thought maybe I can make a house version. Um, I would have done it a lot differently today, but people seem to like it, and it's kind of funny that I found out years later that somebody made a vinyl without me knowing.
Yeah, it's been bootlegged, but it's supposed to be like from Giles Peterson playing it on the radio or something crazy like that. Because if you go on the YouTube, someone says, "Oh, this isn't the full version."
Yeah, might be.
So yeah, so someone's literally like pressed up a radio recording.
It's one of the tracks that people still keep asking about from way back.
Yeah, cool. I'm just going to stick it on. So yeah, we're not going to play loads of tracks, by the way, folks. I just wanted to give you a bit of background onto Andreas because I think it's important to see where Andreas came from and then to how he's ended up moving into the composing. Because for me, it was very impressive to see someone that I saw as part of the dance scene, suddenly getting to make music for computer games. So, I think it's good to set the scene. So I'm just going to play the Hype Mango remix, which, yeah, I mean, amazing work, Andreas. Like I hammered this, and also you've done a remix of, is it Moth by Fortet and Burial? Is it Moth?
I don't think it's called Moth, but
Is
I
it
don't.
Cub?
Yeah, no, it's not that either. I can't remember the name of the track.
Yeah, but everyone, you should check out Andreas's, like sort of, because it's funny, isn't it? Because I would never dare do those kind of remixes like what you've done. That are sort of kind of, can we say unofficial? you know? I
Yeah,
would be too scared to do them. You know what I mean?
yeah, and for example, for the Fortet Burial one, then I was approached to release it as a bootleg, but I was like, felt like they had just released the track, they didn't know anything about it, so I turned it down. So because I had made this is a funny story about one I did back in the days in 2001. Um, I just made it for my own pleasure, a remix of For Hero Hold It Down, and I played it on my Japanese tours. And on the last gig in Tokyo, somebody just asked me, do you have any of your own songs that I can have on CD? And I gave them a CD, not thinking about that track being on there.
No.
And then like that was just before Christmas, and on New Year's Day, it had found itself via that DJ to somebody who toured after me, some British DJ, who then brought it back and played it in Plastic People, I think, and Giles was there, and he just came to the DJ booth and just took the CD from that guy, played it on the show on New Year's Day, on his famous New Year's Day show. So that's how fast, even in the CDR days, that something could, and then I had some angry emails.
I was going to say, did Digo phone you up then? You know what I mean?
I won't say which one of them liked it and which one of them hated it, but you can you can have a guess.
Yeah. 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 So yeah, let's listen to that. That's and it shows you how in that pre-internet age it was a physical thing, wasn't it? It was a CDR. It was still making its way back to the UK. So let's check out the Hype Mango remix. Did I not share my audio? Sorry, give me a sec.
I think it might be really quiet in the beginning, and it's
okay. I thought I'd shared the sound. Yeah.
I think you pulled the volume control down, Danny.
Oh, that's right. Thank you, Michael. I'm glad someone knows what they're doing here. So yeah, you get the idea, folks. Yeah, nice one, Andreas. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a background to people. Obviously, there's a lot more stuff you've done, so that's very short sort of introduction to Andreas's past sound. But I just wanted to ask you, Andreas, how did you then get into producing, making a soundtrack for a computer game?
Yeah, that was, I would say, that particular game by chance. But I've sort of, I tried it a little bit in my early 20s, just like pitching for adverts and stuff like that. And I always knew, with my sort of musical high school background and being a trained pianist and everything, that this is something that I would probably enjoy doing, and something that I would like to try out. And I always thought, uh, like coming back from some gig somewhere, thinking like, when you think about your future, is this something that I can do for my entire life? I always had a sort of comforting thought that I saw myself sitting at home, like being comfortable and making music for media, so to speak. So I always had that plan in the back of my mind. And then I've always been really interested in video games. And when I was a kid at 10 years old, like my parents were pretty much against everything, computers, and they thought I should be outside and play, which they were probably right about that. But I was just obsessed by computer games, and I had the phone list for my classmates. I was just like putting a red dot next to the ones who I knew had like a computer or a Nintendo at home. One of them, we played a lot of computer games together, but we also tried making our own games. And we were 10 years old, so this would have been like in 91. And that's also the same year that I had my first keyboard, like synthesizer, a Yamaha SY22, I think. And then yeah, and like I also, my dad brought home like an Atari 1040 something, and that was like my first setup. So I tried to make music, and he tried to make like a game, but it was on PC, and there was no way of even getting my music in the game at that time, because everything, the capabilities of computers at that time. And then we grew up and we lost contact. But then I was playing a game, which is called Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, which is made by a Swedish film director, who turned to making video games now, and his name is Josef Fares. I just saw my friend's name at the end credits, like lead programmer, Carl Granberg. And I was just like, wow. I was really moved by this game, and there were some parts of the game that reminded of the old games that we used to play together, like King's Quest, for example, that used to blow my mind, even though it's just like a stick man just looking like Robin Hood going and solving puzzles in his kingdom. Then that just blew my mind. And it was just some part of that game where the main characters went down a well, and there was some hidden world underground, and just reminded me of that. So I wrote him a heartfelt message on Facebook, and then we got back in contact, and it turned out that he wanted to make his own game, and then he asked me to make the music for that. So basically, even though this is called a masterclass, I'm just some guy who made one computer game with his his childhood friend. But on the other hand, I've been composing music for such a long time. So, and I'm really actually never had so much fun on a musical project that wasn't, you know, artist stuff is one thing. That's like your heart and soul. But just like this was just such a nice opportunity to just use all of the music knowledge that I've acquired in my life and just put it into one thing with a specific task. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to composing for more games.
Yeah, great, Andreas. So you have a trailer, don't you, from the actual game? Because I thought it might be good for everyone just to have a little look and see. I hope that some of you have checked out the links that I've been posting. If not, I'm annoyed. But basically, yeah, if you could play that little trailer, Andreas, because yeah, I was blown away by the music, and I mean, it sounds like your passion project. It doesn't to me sound like you're just working for somebody. You know, it's like
That's what I was gonna say is that I have also been doing some adverts these past 3 years, and so I'm used to working like in that world. Like somebody tells you specifically what they want, and that I've used a lot of that knowledge in this. But as far as video games go, then I haven't had like somebody telling me what to do and being really specific, because with a childhood friend, he just has I think he's asked me to change like 3 things in the entire game throughout the process, and obviously that's not how it's going to be every time. So this feels more like we made a game together rather than me being just a composer. And yeah.
yeah.
So
So you're co-host, Andreas, so you should be able to share your screen.
let's see if I can do that. Share. So you should see my QuickTime player.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna say a few words about the game and what kind of game it is. It's basically it started out as many games do, like a sort of indie game jam thing. And a game jam, as far as I understand it, is like when you get together and just make something. Maybe you are 10 groups of people, different groups of people, and then you just try to come up with something in maybe 1 day or 2 days, and then you present it, and there's a winner or something like that. So they were 3 people doing this, and they made a game which was basically Tetris in space, and you have a little spaceship, and you're trying to nudge pieces together to make bigger structures. And then they knew they wanted to make that into a full game. And then since then it's been, oh, what if it's Russians, you playing as Russia and against the US? That's cool. And what if there's a German scientist that is kidnapped and asked to make like a female supercomputer that you can in game you can upgrade it, and then it becomes like a super intelligence and takes over. So basically there's puzzle gameplay, and then through your actions and your choices in game, the story, the cutscenes in between can branch out to many different branches. And I think there are 16 different endings. So and one of my favorite storylines is when the female supercomputer takes over. And I also wrote some music in the game, and this trailer that you will see, she is singing. So I vocoded her voice basically. And for this specific trailer, like when we started out, there were no how to say, like there weren't any plans of any voice acting or anything like that. And then there was a publisher involved, and they had some investors, and then there was a budget, and then they started hiring voice actors, and then a narrator was needed, and that was about this time last year, and no actors had, like, films or anything that they could shoot because of COVID. So that was a good opportunity to get somebody really, really famous and cool on board the project. So that's what they did. They approached Bill Nye, who's played, like many people will know him. He's played in he's the villain with all the octopus beard thing in Pirates of Caribbean, and he's also in Love Actually and a lot of films. So, and to me, he has one of the just really most awesome narrator voices, and just so I had to pinch myself that for my first project like this, I was actually playing strings and trying to sort of make an environment for his voice, because that was such a treat, basically. And he, for this trailer, we included him as a sort of pseudo character. He's not a character in the game, but in this trailer, his voice is also vocoded a little bit. So, and you'll see and hear a little bit what the game is about.
What does music sound like in space?
Lend me your ears, and tell you I will. Join us on our odyssey, you, me, and my friend Bill.
Even the most epic stories have humble beginnings, or so I'm told. Just wait and see. Have a good one, and look to the stars.
So you would like to fly a drone?
And look to the stars.
Help your people find a new home. Seems kind of late now to atone.
Look to the stars.
In the end, aren't we all alone?
Cheer up.
They make you think that you are brave,
Look to the stars.
matching the colors like an ape.
Look to the stars.
Well, he needs, every human is a slave.
To the stars.
No turning back from deep space. Can't escape
The settings are fine.
the human race. How easy to deduct.
Let's start the game.
Blinded by power, predestined to be fucked.
To the stars.
Isn't our journey made of so much more? Man, machine, an epic tale of love worth dying for.
Let's get this show on the road, shall we?
By all means, play the game and try to reach the end. See you beyond the stars, how lovely to transcend. Lend me your mind, and deliver you I will. Join us on our odyssey, you, me, and my friend Bill.
But that, my friends, is but the short beginning of humanity's long journey deeper into space.
All right. So there you can sort of have some flavor about the storyline and sort of the quirky humor that's very much part of this game. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Andreas, before we get into the sort of the music production part of the session, I just wondered if you would be cool just to show the group a little bit around your studio. It isn't like your normal studio, is it? Because your family's house, is that right?
So I've we live together in Berlin, but these past years I've been sort of bouncing between Sweden and Berlin. So I have a home studio there and a home studio corner at my parents' house here. And then when COVID struck last year, I just happened to be here and didn't really find a reason to go back to Berlin, since there's a huge lockdown there, and here is just close to nature and everything. It's just been so much better to be here. I would say, apart from that, this room, I mean, it's very nice, but it's not acoustically treated, and it's just it's amazing that my parents let me have a studio corner in their living room, but that's what this is. So
I can't imagine my parents letting me kind of move back in and having a studio. You know what I mean? Like, yeah,
for sure. But my plan, my dream is to still maybe keep the room in Berlin, because at this point I have pretty much a double of everything I need, like the speakers, for example. So I can just plug out in at one place and just plug in as soon as I arrive. So that's great. But I would love to have an apartment and a studio, like a proper studio with a recording room and everything in Gothenburg. So that's the plan.
that's your plan. Yeah, yeah. So do you want to switch to the second camera and show us around a little bit, Andreas?
I'm gonna see if I can figure out. So it should be here. Right?
Hey. I'll mute myself so it doesn't switch back.
Yeah. So I will use this to see if I can give you. So this is what it looks like. Like there's a piano. So it's quite cozy in that sense, and I've used the piano actually a lot in the game. There's like our exercise bike. So it's COVID style. We crammed all of our needs into one room. I started playing this instrument recently, like a Swedish folk music instrument. So it's a little bit of everything. But gear-wise, I can start with the speakers. Those are Focal Twin 6BE, and I got a pair of those already when we were living together in Berlin, and it just made such a huge improvement, because just being able to actually hear and understand the music, I think it was because I was with me and my dad. We were here in Gothenburg listening to some vocals in like a high fidelity store, basically. So when I found out they make studio speakers, then I kind of knew I wanted, I don't know what to call them, but like musical speakers, in the sense that yes, they are accurate, but they are not boring to listen to. And they are not. They, music sounds great through them, and a lot of people would say sounds too great, because you want to hear your mistakes, right, when you're in the studio. I just like, they fit my style. They if I was more surgical precision sound engineer guy, would probably go for like Neumann's or something like that. But to me, I just enjoy composing with them, and like engineering was never my strong side anyway, so I kind of gave up on perfection in that field, and that's what also maybe moving into composing has been about, it's just been embracing my musicality and my ability to compose, to write songs, to rather than being in a field where, like club music, where a lot of the times it's just like, does the kick drum come through, so I've been enjoying not worrying about kick drums a lot these past years. Moving on to the rest, I have 2015 MacBook. I was for the longest time on an old PC, like running Windows XP. So like just in, I think it was 2015 or 16 that I bought this one, and switched from PC to Mac, and that's also when I started composing for the video game, for video games and for adverts and stuff like that. And it's just been an essential step for me to just have modern tools, and being able to just, when there's something new out, I can actually get that. When I hear about a plugin, it's not like, oh, that won't run on my computer. So I would say switching to a fairly modern computer and starting to buy plugins, first of all, like buying your plugins so that they are yours. You can upgrade them, you can upgrade your system, and all of that just seems very important if you want to be serious about composing. I've got some outboard synths. This one I think a lot of people know already. It's like the Behringer Minimoog clone, Model D, I think it's called. And it's just like, it's dirt cheap, at least for as far as Minimoogs go. It's just amazing, because I always wanted to have a Minimoog, but they cost a lot of money, and this is just this whole sort of cheap clones of amazing old synths that actually sound all right. It's quite a revolution that's been going on for the past 5 or 10 years. So I really love this one, and I lost it, or I didn't lose it, but it was left behind in Berlin. So I thought I'd just buy another one. So now I have one in Berlin and one here. So potentially I could switch back and forth. This one is little more like one of a kind thing, and it wouldn't be too familiar to many people. It's called a SID station, and there's a long story behind that, but basically some guys in Gothenburg, where I'm from, they had like a final exam project thing at the what do you say, engineering university here, and they thought, why don't we make a synthesizer out of the old SID chip that's in all the Commodore 64 computers, which is like a legendary sound chip for sounding so different. And in the game, the female super intelligent AI computer, her interface is like the bluish C64 computer that we grew up with. Like the reason why I called my childhood friend and bugged him to come and play at his house, that was that computer. So when he made that tribute to the old Commodore 64, and I knew I was going to make music for like themes and stuff for the female AI then in the game, then I just knew I had to get this, because I knew it existed, and I've used it a ton in the game. it's really hard to program. You have to a lot of menu diving, and then you also have to, like, the MIDI is the MIDI timing of it is just awful. So if you have like a fast arpeggio, you have to sort of record it and then chop everything. It's really tiresome, but it can make some really beautiful sounds, and not only like chiptune, but also like really sort of muffled Ports of Canada bass lines, and that kind of just strange sound. So it's very versatile, which was surprising. So I love that one. And then behind there is a Moog Minotaur. It's just standard bass synth, and I think I use this one a lot in the game as well. Maybe it's a bit hard to see, but it's a Dave Smith instrument, I think, or maybe they changed their name to Sequential now, but it's one of their many Prophet iterations. This is called Rev 2. As I understand it, it's got DCOs, which means that it's analog, but they're digitally controlled still. So it's quite a precise analog synth. And basically, I got it because my friend in Berlin had it, and I borrowed it just to try it out with the game, and it was a really good match. Since the game is an 80s space adventure, and basically this sounds a lot. It's got that Vangelis brass and pads and all of those epic symphonic sounds that I was really thrilled to have just in one machine. So that's pretty much what I've been using to make the game. And recently, like after a year of sitting in a pretty bad chair, and this table was just like a board, and then there was like a normal synth stand under it, so it was just wobbly, and it was just like basically not a very ergonomic situation going on. And I'm really glad, because I didn't know I was going to be stuck here for a year, and now I'm really glad to having invested in really like just a good chair and stuff. And I thought it'd be worth showing off that these are height adjustable. So basically, yeah, you know that. But what's pretty neat, I'm not sure if this is visible, but like there's the stand for the table, and there's the stand for, so I don't have a synth stand, I have another stand like the one for the table. So under here is the same thing, so I can actually adjust this as well, which is, you know, kind of a luxury, but that means I can be composing while standing up if I want, which is just wonderful, actually. And also that, you know, I can make the keyboard rise as well. So then, because it wouldn't make any sense to be able to rise the table but not the keyboard. So I'm really happy about that solution. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. And I'm gonna put this back and see if I can get it down.
Thanks, Andreas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, the height adjustable table and chair for, well, you know, your keyboard stand's that's pretty flashy.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, like I never used to think about that stuff, and it's a very, you know, sort of 40-year-old thing to do to just to start. But, you know, if I would have done it, obviously it's a matter of a budget, but I just wish, like this chair, if I would have had that when I was 20, then, you know, I could have got it then, and then it's just makes such a difference. So it's something that I would like to recommend to anyone.
Yeah, I just want to say to everyone, by the way, I got a Herman Miller mirror chair, right? I got it secondhand. They're about 800 quid brand new, but I got mine for 80 quid, like off Facebook Marketplace. And it's made such a difference. Like being able to sit in a chair for like 10 hours and not be in pain is amazing, but it's not been very good for my waistline, unfortunately. So I've been pretty inactive. But yeah, like Andreas is saying, like seriously, the work environment it's so important. And people, like, if you see photographs of Jay Diller, he worked on a stool, you know, like a horrible, like one of those like square stools that's got like a plastic, you know, like those little square wooden stools that are quite tall, like a bar stool basically. And you know, you know, rest in peace. I mean, I don't think he had very good health. So, I mean, I think, you know, look after yourselves, guys. Do you know what I mean? It's like it really helps with the music.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so I think we should then start.
Jump into the game.
What I've done is I've prepared a cutscene, because that's the most. There's also like gameplay music in the game where I would compose, you know, upbeat music, and then have a similar version of that song, but very like almost an ambient version of the same song, so that when you go back into the control room uh, and just choosing level and stuff, then that version would be playing, and then when you go into space, then it sort of magically crossfades to the more upbeat version. And I made 3 different songs like that for each act in the game. But apart from that, most of the music has been cutscenes, like story, what happens in between. And it would work like this: that my friend, the programmer, he would send me just the whole cutscene, or like a bunch of cutscenes in the same video file, without any music, of course, and just the dialogue. And so what you will see is, because we were halfway through the game, so you will see pretty rough graphics, and I will sometimes have moved things around to better fit the music. But we had a system, and I haven't worked on many games, so I wouldn't know if this is how you would normally do it. But it worked well for us that he had a black screen with the name of the cutscene, and then I would tell him where to start the music in relation to the first visible frame after the black screen with the name of the cutscene. So that's basically how we did it. I'm going to show you also what happened before the cutscene that we are in. And let me just see if I can share screen again and share this one. So can you guys see this?
Quick, Pillar, on your feet.
I hope you can. Yeah. So basically, this guy, he's Boris, our supervisor, and he's been sort of keeping an eye on us throughout this story. We were, when the game started, we're a Russian potato peeler tucked away peeling potatoes, and then they are suddenly in need of a drone pilot. So what's a drone pilot? Well, that's somebody who controls the drone, who puts together spaceships, and that's the gameplay. And then there's a nuclear war on Earth, and the real drone pilot never arrives. So you're permanently upgraded, and then it's about the Russians finding a new planet because Earth was destroyed, and they're in a race with the capitalists and the US. And in this storyline, what's happened is that there's a dictator kind of aspiring dictator who takes over. His name is Komarov, and he's basically been running things the whole game, and that's what happens if you don't do much. And now we're trying to take him down, basically, and we're on his death list all of a sudden, and that's where this cutscene starts. So this is what happens before the one we're gonna compose for.
Quick, Peeler, on your feet. They're gossiping on the shortwave. Komarov has a death warrant with your name on it.
Don't resist, comrade. You'll only make a mess.
Well, don't just stand there, Peeler. Get over here. Here, take this. It's much more elegant than those clumsy rifles. We need to stop Komarov once and for all. Go get him, Peeler. I'll stay here and supervise.
So this is one of 3 occasions in the game where there's a special level, and they're always towards the end before an ending. And whether you succeed with this level or not determines if you get the good or bad ending for this storyline. So, and we used to play a lot of Doom together. I don't know if anyone played the first Doom, but this is basically us making an homage, and the music as well, to the first Doom game.
Attack, comrades!
So this is a funny section where I try to make something that sounds like an old PC game. Let's fast forward. You chase this guy, Komarov, the dictator, down, and he asks that you join him instead of trying to fight him. I think he's getting a little bit scared now. And then this is what was so nice about composing for this game. Like when we pick up a key card and go into the boss room, then I made a transition from the Doom reference, and I just tried to make music that sounded more like another favorite game of mine, which was many years later, I think around 2000, which is called Unreal Tournament. And there's a soundtrack for a particular level called Facing Worlds, and everyone who's played that game loves that music. So that was my chance to make something. And if I would do something like that and send it back to him, he would be really happy about that. Whereas, if I was just a composer for a game, probably, I would have to ask first. But it was all like, this process was a lot about surprising him with mutual references back, like taking it another step, coming up with an idea, doing it, and sort of we were riffing back and forth in that sense. So,
I am the commander of the Space Force, but I see the same burning ambition in you as I do in myself. Stop this nonsense. All will be forgiven. Besides, it seems the position of second in command just opened up.
I'm sad to see that you persist in this foolish. You think you can kill me and claim the commandant?
So here he is in a giant mech, and it's very it's a lot of fun going from the Unreal Tournament thing. The original that Unreal Tournament song had some Amen breakbeats, and then I used them as well. But then, since this is a boss fight, I put some orchestral stuff. So I don't really know if it's working, but I had a lot of fun making it. You know, like a full-on orchestra with choir and stuff, and some Amen beats as well.
For yourself. Think again. Kill me and claim the commandantship for yourself. Think again.
Yeah, so anyway, the game wasn't developed enough for, I needed to loop the sequence there because there wasn't enough footage to go with the music. But in this case, we take him down and his mech falls, and what happens next? That's what we're going to find out and what we're going to compose for. So let's move finally into Cubase. And the reason I'm telling you all this is because sure, it's nice to compose, and but you have to have the context. You have to know what's going on. You have to help telling the story. That's like it's great, to be able to get nerdy with references and stuff. But when things are happening on screen, you're not like the spotlight is not on the music, like it would be in art when you're doing artist stuff, but this is just supporting the narration. So let's see if I can switch to Cubase. Can you guys see my Cubase? All right. So in Cubase, a big reason for me to switch to a more modern computer is that I could actually have the video stuff in a window synced while working. So I'm sure most DAWs have that, like Logic would probably have it, and I'm not sure about Ableton, but this is essential. It is to be able to see what's going on here. So I've bounced like from the last cutscene, the last bit, and also with the music. So let's hope it works. Let's see. Go back a little bit. I should turn the music up, right? Here. So what we saw there is that, sure, we took down the evil guy, but also the hero, the player, and this is the only time you will see the player in the game, is actually on the floor as well. So, we all know in video games and films that the hero doesn't die in a situation like this, but the music has still got to ask the question or what happened. So
Oh, Peeler. Just because you took out Komarov doesn't mean you get the rest of the day off.
all right.
Let's get going. We should be able to end this silly war now.
So what happens? Boris, the supervisor, finds us, the player, on the floor and says, basically, come on, let's finish this. In order to portray the feeling of worry, then it's something dark, right? Like something diabolic. And I have some orchestral bass here. This is from BBC Orchestra, BBC Symphony Orchestra. And I mean, we could be here all day talking about which of these plugins to get, but basically one of the major players when it comes to string libraries and orchestra libraries, it's a British company called Spitfire Audio. And I really just like their products. Not that I have tried everything else, since I'm quite new to orchestral composing, but it's a lot of people like them, and I like their philosophy, I like their sound, I just like most of the things that I've acquired from them. And they have been making this kind of orchestra plugins for years now. But this is from, I think, about 1 or 2 years old. And it's their attempt to basically make one plugin to rule them all, in the sense that not to be the most professional and versatile one, but just to be the one which is like, if you would go to composer school, then every computer will have this, because it's just such an all-round plugin. And it sounds really professional, so it's not that, but if you would like some special articulations, maybe it's not in this one, because it's not a huge library in that sense. There are many different versions of this. I know that you, Danny, tried the entry level version, which I think is 50 euros or something, and you can even get that one for free. It's called BBC Symphony Orchestra Discover. If you're at all interested in trying this kind of stuff out, that would be where to start. And I think you can apply to have it for free, even if you just, there's a form and you tell them why you can't afford it, and then there's the I think that's called Discover. Then there's a core version, and I have the professional version. Not sure, maybe there are more mic positions and articulations, but yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit extra about this one, because that's the one that I've been using throughout the game. Since completing the game and getting paid for it in full, then I've bought a lot more than I should from Spitfire. So I have tons of stuff from them now, and it's very enjoyable trying out the difference. But if you need something, somewhere to start, then this is really good. Also, they have a lot of free stuff. Spitfire they have like a whole series called Labs, where they basically take bits and pieces of either stuff that didn't, make it to retail, or they have taken single patches out of their instruments. So like just with the BBC Discover and the free Labs stuff, then you will have a lot. There's also a site which one of the Spitfire guys is involved in his free time, which is called Piano Book, where people basically sample their own instruments, pianos, just funny kitchen, banging stuff in the just like whatever. Like it's a huge sort of public domain sample library site, which is also kind of cool because I've found a lot of more unique instruments there, and they're completely free. So yeah, that's something that I can recommend as well. So for our basses, you will see that this slider is moving, and oh, I should switch my camera so you can see also here. Then you can see here, it corresponds. So basically, if you want to play quiet, you keep the mod wheel down. If you want to then you keep it up. And so that's how you create the dynamics. You can have, for example, choose different techniques. Legato is sliding between notes. The long notes, so that would be monophonic then, and for polyphonic action, then I have the long notes, and then there are many articulations. Like that's more staccato. I've tried other bass libraries or like patches from other libraries, but I really enjoy these. So let's keep them on legato and get back to our story.
Oh, Peeler. Just because you took out...
Something like that, or maybe even deeper, I don't know. No, it doesn't go that low. So I'll just... Oh. So now I inadvertently changed the articulation, because that's something to mention maybe, that in the very bottom of the keyboard, you can change fast between the articulations. So like I'm pressing keys here, right? So that's below the audible notes. But we want legato, and we don't want to press that again. So that's where we want to be. Let's record this so we can move forward.
Oh, Peeler. Just because you took out Komarov doesn't mean you get the rest of the day off. Let's get going. We should be able to end this.
So if you guys were unmuted and we had or we were in the same room, I was giving a class, I would be like, okay, so what's happening here? Can someone guess what we're going for? Like, the hero rises, and in quite a, you can see in quite a majestic fashion somehow, like magically comes to life. So while composing for this, I found this is also a really good tip for anyone who wants to have like an all-round soft synth with a lot of sample-based stuff and a lot of just like atmospheric textures and stuff. Omnisphere, many of you probably know it already, and I had it a long time ago on PC, and now before starting the game, then I knew I needed this, because there's just so many like ambient pads and just sample stuff. Like this is choral effects. So let's get to the right octave. So we can even read, oh, it's an English adult choir singing in a London cathedral. So basically, this is a little bit cheating, and I usually don't want to do that. Like, this is a sequence of 2 chords, but it was just sounding so good that I couldn't resist just using that. So let's try and time that when I'm gonna also make this smaller, so I can see what I'm doing. So let's try and time that for when the hero rises.
Oh, Peeler. Just because you took out Komarov doesn't mean you get the rest of the day off. Let's get...
So I really like it, like you hear that something's gonna happen, and then when it lands on the second chord, that's when he rises up. And then he says his joke, like, just because you took out the bad guy doesn't mean you get the rest of the day off. So
let's get going. We should be able to end this silly...
I just want to keep in the same vein, and then I will do the same, but I will choose the... This was the choir and now I have the choir ah. So let's just put that
Peeler. Just because you took out Komarov doesn't mean you get the rest of the day off. Let's get going. We should be able to end this silly war now.
I think that's fine. So that's that part. Do we want something more? Maybe some strings. I found that I use these strings a lot. They are also from the BBC, so I'm not going to show the... But it's just like, I can actually show just what it looks like. So it's all the same plugin, and then you scroll here, and I've chosen violins, strings, violins, and then the tremolo articulation. And I just found these... I just found you cannot really, like, tremolo is when you like go back and forth really fast with the bow, but you cannot really hear that so well here, but I just like the shimmering quality of these strings, so I use them a lot, even though I was composing string parts that actually weren't supposed to be tremolo. So let's see what they sound like. Then I need to... Okay, so I found the chords that we're playing. So let's just add the strings.
Just because you took out Komarov doesn't mean you get the rest of the day off. Let's get going. We should be able to end this silly war now.
All right, so we're done with that part. So normally I would polish every part a lot more. Maybe not right away, but pretty much straight away to get like a feel. I would add effects and all kinds of stuff. This is like sort of a mock-up version. I took my really big document where I have many cutscenes together, and I just took everything that we need in order to show this cutscene without breaking my computer with Zoom and everything. So it's I bounced a lot of stuff, but basically what I've done is that I've made it all empty, and I will like make this sort of rough sketch or a skeleton for us to tell the story. and then I have all the other like things that we can unmute later. So let's continue. What happened? The hero is fine, and now there's some negotiation with the capitalists. And in this storyline, the supervisor has been doing sort of V for Vendetta kind of thing where he has a mask. Let's see if I can make it bigger. So he's been helping the capitalists, or like everybody, to get rid of the bad guy, and so he's now reminding the capitalists that, hey, I'm the one who made this happen, and remember, we had a deal. Like when he was in character, when he was B for Vendetta in character, then he struck a deal with the capitalists. And of course, it's not the Guy Fawkes mask, but it's one of the Russian dolls instead, because the Russians. So it's the game is a lot of different references like this, and a lot of good laughs throughout the storyline. Okay, so let's listen what they say.
Remember our deal, General.
Might I suggest just stranding us on an island?
You mean like a socialist reservation? Well, at least that would stop your crazy ideas from interfering with the free market.
Yeah, so then you haven't seen that, but there's a theme. Every time we've seen the guy in the mask, there's been the beginning of some heroic music playing, like some chords that I wrote. So I've generally tried so that every important character has their own melody in the game. That's just how it's done, I guess. You will find that in a lot of different films. I think it's pretty standard, and it's a helpful way, like to sort of give an immediate emotion connected to that. So there are some chords for this guy, as you know, the B for Vendetta guy, but also Boris is himself, and the theme for him, or the soundscape for him, is just some Russian lazy accordion, just like completely different. So we will have to sort of go back and forth between that, but we'll also have to play some capitalist sounds. And I went for the Americana style guitars there. So we will have 3 different things at play here, and they are not to disturb the dialogue at all at any time. So we just have to paint gently, so to speak. All right, so first up is Boris and our accordion. And for that, I have this Russian accordion. So this is what's great about these days. Like, if you think that, I need some balalaikas, and I need some Russian accordion, and I need some general Russian folk instruments, then there's a guy in Russia who's sampled them meticulously. And you know, maybe 20 years ago that wouldn't be the case. So this technical revolution in that sense, that everything is accessible to you. I think the whole bundle was maybe less than 200 euros. So, and then I get, for example, this called Bayan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but sounds exactly like you want it to. Some instruments are more, are better sampled than others. Like generally, like static with just dynamics like that works very good. So let's just give a little bit of that when Boris is talking.
Let's get going.
General Makbar, on behalf of the Space Force, I offer our complete and total surrender.
So you would think that maybe, we go like something completely new here, but I generally want to keep the same vibe as we had before, so I just want it to be just something, just something like that. So I will see if I can come up with that. And again, the mod wheel will control the dynamics, so I will try to keep it fairly low.
General Makbar, on behalf of the Space Force, I offer our complete and total surrender.
And since I was using my both hands there, then I couldn't touch the mod wheel, so I will do it after.
General Makbar, on behalf of the Space Force, I offer our complete and total surrender.
So I think that's fine. Now, what's going on here? The capitalists. And it's been fun doing the game because I've had to research for what I wanted. Like, I want 80s guitars. How do I do that? So then I find out that long ago, Hans Zimmer released a really good library for like Akai samplers before even this native instruments and Kontakt and everything was a thing. So how do I get it into the standard sampler that's Kontakt? I had to get the CDs, the discs, and then convert them into Kontakt format, and there's a software for that. So it's like a half a day's work just to make it work. But when you do, then you're one of the few people who has access to this library, and that's a nice feeling. And I, if anyone is crazy about that 80s guitar sound, then I would recommend looking into that, because the Hans Zimmer guitar library has just been totally essential to the game. This is what it sounds like, obviously with some effects and stuff, but and that's just like, obviously a real guitarist is always better. On the other hand, a real guitarist and the right guitar and the right amp and the right everything, like Hans Zimmer did that for us, and he's the man. So it's just like sometimes you have to pinch yourself because you got access to this. Like if somebody would have told me that even 15 years ago, then that's pretty cool, right? So let's see.
Of course, I offer our complete and total surrender.
Surrender, huh? I usually prefer annihilation. Easier to deal with prisoners of war when there are none.
Remember?
So I think just there's a little bit too much of a gap there before he puts on the mask. So I will just move both of these last things I did for better timing. So it's a little bit closer to what's happening next. And of course you want to like with guitars,
Surrender.
you want some pitch bend action as well. So I'm gonna just touch the pitch bend as well.
I usually prefer annihilation. Easier to deal with prisoners of war when there are none.
It's very subtle, but it is just makes the whole difference. Like you feel like it's an actual guitarist playing. All right. So what happens next? Okay.
Remember our deal, General.
So for some reason, he's not got his whole getup there. But for some reason, when I saw the mask and the whole thing, I just wanted something that a little bit like 80s, maybe Daft Punk, French style. I don't know what made me go that route, but I did. So, and that's the Prophet that I will show you again. It's this one. So this is a patch called Knight Rider Brass, and when I play it, you can hear it's just like really. It's just what you would like. I don't think software could do it just as good as this one. So what I wrote for the B for Vendetta character is like that. Those are the chords. So I will try to put them sort of in between his lines there.
Remember our deal, General.
Might I suggest just stranding us on an island?
You mean like a socialist reservation? Well, at least that would stop your crazy ideas from interfering with the free market.
Something like that. And noticed how I was careful not to play when they're talking. So if you can get those lines in between the dialogue, then that's just great. And I'm going to show you, I'm not sure I could even call it a trick, because I think it's fairly known way to do things, but it's something that I've used a lot in the game, and I've always used a lot in my music. When you have often like an outboard synthesizer, I think you can all hear me in mono, so this is maybe not the perfect environment to show this in, but I'll encourage you to try it out for yourselves. So basically I have 3 notes in all of these chords, and this already has some stereo effects from the Prophet itself, but sometimes you have like a beautiful sound, but it's just straight in the middle, and you want, especially if there's dialogue happening in the middle, you want to spread it out to the left and to the right, and you would add like a stereo plugin of some sort, like fake stereo. And one thing that I find sounds a lot better a lot of the time is to do this. So I will just put that on there. So I will duplicate, after just muting everything, I will duplicate the track so I can have 3 different stems, and then I will have to zoom a bit, but just extracting, I'm doing it wrong, but it can be easily corrected. So if I'm extracting the top notes like this, and then I do the same for every for the other ones, like I would have the middle line here, all the middle notes. I'm not going to do it all, but you get the picture. Like then, because you will have to record this synth into Cubase again, since it's an outboard synth. And then when you've done that, then you will put them on different channels and pan the top two to left and right. So and in that, especially like I'm not sure if they did this in the 80s, but I just feel like this kind of layering sounds a lot more authentic than putting on some strange facing fake stereo thing. And I've done this before, so I will mute these parts, and then I have them prepared for you guys here somewhere. Is it this one? Yeah. So I'm not sure you can hear the stereo now, but if you can't, then you'll have to imagine it.
General.
Might I suggest just stranding us on an island?
You mean like a socialist reservation? Well, at least that would stop your crazy ideas from interfering with the free market.
So, and then there's some effects and stuff there as well to make it blend in a bit more. So that sounds good, but it's a bit empty. It's a bit naked still. Let's have the tremolo strings back, and just have something there. Let's see if we can make it work.
Remember,
I should move this here, maybe. It's hard to know where to put it so you guys can see it. Yeah, let's see. Did I record by mistake? No, I didn't.
remember our deal, General.
Oh.
Remember our
Okay,
deal.
so when he puts on the mask, I'm not playing the theme right away. So I wanted the strings to sort of strike some tension there. Okay, that was too much too fast, but
Remember our deal, General.
Might I suggest just stranding us on an island?
You mean like a socialist reservation? Well, at least that would stop your crazy ideas from interfering with the free market.
so I followed the melody at the end there. So then it's already sounding more, like a real soundtrack.
Crazy ideas from interfering with the free market.
So normally, like, I hear that note is a bit early, then I'll go in and change that like that. We don't have time to do very much of that, but you make little adjustments pretty much every time, all the time. And
so that was how the remains of the Space Force, stripped of all advanced technology, found themselves quarantined on a remote socialist reservation.
So this is pretty interesting. Now we're completely in a different setting. We're at a tropical island because that's where they're gonna put the communism so that it's not going to be dangerous for the economic system, the capitalists. So, and where are we? Like, we've played this theme,
socialist,
twice.
Just stranding us on an island?
You mean like a socialist reservation. Well, at least that would stop your crazy ideas from interfering with the free market.
So we're kind of teasing. The hero was rising, some accordion, some capitalist guitars, the B theme. Where are we going with this? Well, this is what I feel composing for a story. As long as the story keeps unfolding like this, you don't have to. You can just keep going with these different, just like little strokes with a paintbrush, just like helping what's happening. But we have to go somewhere at some point. But he's talking about here, it's this like a big shot of Earth, and he's talking here about how the capitalists put them on the island. So let's go back to the guitars and put them again. Pretty much the same thing, I think. So let's get that in there real quick.
So that was how the remains of the Space Force, stripped of all advanced technology.
And the pitch bend is important.
So that was how the remains of the Space Force.
All right, that's done. But there's a development here. Like, we just have the same chords again, but we just I think we need some more strings here, just like to really build up like that we're actually going somewhere. So I've decided to just do something rising like that. Let's see if that works.
So that was how the remains of the Space Force, stripped of all advanced technology.
And don't forget the mod wheel, the dynamics, like start low and go higher.
So that was how the remains of the Space Force, stripped of all advanced technology.
All right. So where are we now? Something like the music is asking for some resolve of some sort, and we've actually arrived to where it was already leading up to, that they're going to be sort of put on this island. So I took a patch that I've sampled myself. I was in a studio and there was a really cool, I often do this actually. I keep my Zoom recorded with me, and if I find like a really nice, like obviously an analog synthesizer like a Moog or something like that, it's going to be, you have all the cutoff and all of that stuff. But for something like a Casio keyboard from the 80s, where all the notes are pretty static, there's not much, like maybe there's some velocity, but it's pretty much, if you would just sample every note from, or like every fourth half note across the keyboard, then you can just put that in your software sampler and you wouldn't really hear the difference. So I've collected some really nice sounds just by asking, hey, can I just have a few minutes with this synth after we've done practicing? So this is let's see I don't remember what the synth is called, but this is the crispy xylophone from and you can get any xylophone, but the crispy xylophone from a Casio synthesizer will sound just right for this kind of like 80s style game. So I was really happy to be able to use something that sounds great, but also a little bit 80s. Yeah, so let's see when they get to the island how that is.
Stripped of all advanced technology, found themselves quarantined on a remote socialist reservation.
So I think I was maybe a little bit late with that one, and I have also some guidance for what I did originally there. So
Was quarantined on a remote socialist reservation.
I can turn on the sound effects because there are some sound effects here, so we can get the feeling for.
So that was how the remains of the Space Force, stripped of all advanced technology, found themselves quarantined on a remote socialist reservation.
I didn't hear the ship taking off there. All right, what happens next? There's a story about what the capitalists are doing meanwhile.
Meanwhile, good old-fashioned dog-eat-dog capitalism was allowed to overrun New Earth. And to be fair, the consortium lasted a good few decades before finally imploding.
Yeah, so we've got something like a montage thing going on there. So let's get some Hans Zimmer guitars, 80s style montage music going. And this is like working with just his screen capture. You will hear like there's some alert from some kind of messenger here.
And to be fair, the consortium lasted a good few decades before finally imploding.
And it's really loud, and there's nothing to do about that while working. You just have to have that annoying sound there, and it's more annoying than you would think. But so let's go back to the Hans Zimmer guitars, and he has some really cool ones which are full chords, and that's just like straight out of a Guns N' Roses intro or something. So it's just like the sound, the authentic sound of the 80s guitars is just wonderful. And then there's like a bass note thing happening here. All right, and I put a click here to know what I'm doing.
Meanwhile, good old-fashioned dog-eat-dog capitalism was allowed to overrun New Earth.
So I think I messed up in two places there, so let's just do that again.
Meanwhile, good old-fashioned dog-eat-dog capitalism was allowed to overrun New Earth. And to be fair, the consortium lasted a good few decades before finally imploding.
Yeah, so you get the main sort of like something more driving there. Like now it's actually something that resembles a song. Yeah, let's see, maybe some other guitars. Yeah, that's just.
Meanwhile, good old-fashioned dog-eat-dog capitalism was allowed to overrun New Earth. And to be fair, the consortium lasted a good few decades before finally imploding.
And let's have some more rhythmical element. Some plucked guitar.
Meanwhile, good old-fashioned dog-eat-dog capitalism was allowed to overrun New Earth. And to be fair, the consortium...
All right. You can see that it ends in like the consortium, as he calls it, is not really working out. Like things are burning at the end there, and you know there's some quite disturbing homelessness going on as well. So we want something a little bit darker there, like some choir maybe. Let's try that. Oh, I took away the video.
Meanwhile, good old-fashioned dog-eat-dog capitalism was allowed to overrun New Earth. And to be fair, the consortium lasted a good few decades before finally imploding.
So normally I would not have it as loud, and you know it would have to sort of be stronger. Here's where you really want it, but you get the picture. So you let that sort of rise over time. Yeah. So now you get the picture of how I'm doing these things. I still have some things that I could show, but also time is running. So I would like to ask you, Danny, should I keep going for some time more and show more elements before I reveal the whole, like the result, or should I jump to the result now? How long do you normally do these things?
I think, Andreas, it's probably because it'd be nice to have a bit of a Q&A. So I think if you can jump to the result, is that all right? Because I think you've really shown us it's been really like mind altering for me, you know. Like, so yeah,
that's nice. Yeah, so I can say what I was gonna do.
Yeah. Or show, if it's not going to take too long, go for it. I mean, I'm easy going, you know what I mean? I think that it'd be nice to do a little bit of a Q&A, because people can ask you some stuff. But there's been quite a lot of talk in the chat about Top Gun.
Exactly. So
all it needs is some Simmons toms.
Yeah.
Aviator shades, you know,
And there's
snare.
There's even one song on the soundtrack which is like, okay, let's make the Top Gun theme, but what it would sound like in Russia. So there's some balalaikas in there and stuff like. So it's just like, it's been tons of references, and there's one whole episode where they go into some building, and there's tons of references to Alien, and one like the Terminator scene when the Terminator crushes a skull, but this time it's a potato because they're in Russia. You know, like just the game is full of those references, and so basically, yeah, you're right there. It's just, and that's what I grew up with, so that's why it's been such a pleasure making this.
Yeah, it feels, Andreas, like this was just the perfect game. Because I mean, like, you've got so much experience, haven't you? And I mean, I lived through the same era as you, but I mean, there's no way I would be able to. You've like bottled it, you know.
Yeah, I would say so. But there's a reason why it was the perfect project for me, because it was the perfect project for my childhood friends, and so that's why it feels like we made the game together, even though I can't program or anything like that. But it's just like, I would get an idea, like, what if the German scientist, he's representing the future, so what if, and like, what should be his melody? Oh, so his, what's German? Oh, it's like Bavarian Oompa Oompa music. No, that's too close to the Russian folk music. Well, what if he's from the 90s? And what if he's got like a streak of green hair and like a tiny ravey piercing, like he's been to the Love Parade or something? And what if at the end, like when he in his story branch, what if at the end it comes like full on like Blümchen techno, Euro dance, and that's what we did. So, and that was all my idea. So I've been involved in that sense as well, and just that was a dream come true, to do that with your childhood friend that you lost contact with. That's been really just a heartwarming thing in that sense.
Andreas, can I ask you, you're working on something new for the same company now, aren't you? So is that a more challenging prospect for you? Because I'm guessing it's not the same game, it's not the same concept. So how have you been finding that?
That's a fantasy game. So it's like Nordic folklore and like that kind of stuff. And actually, that's the game that we started making together. And then it was like, oh, we don't have any budget. Let's make we made this really cool game jam, he said. Let's just make a quick game. And then, that became the main game. So now we're going back to the first game. And so I feel at home with that. But now I get to try all the orchestra stuff even more, like big choirs and that.
Is that why you've got those traditional instruments then? Is that for the game that you're working on now?
It has to do with that, because when I made the theme for that game, then I wanted some nyckelharpa, as it's called. It's translated key harp. I can show it.
Mm-hmm. Can you play it, Andreas?
I can play Twinkle Twinkle Little Star if you give me like 5 hours. So that's
right.
But it looks like this. You play it with a bow, and then so basically, if you know the keytar, it's basically the first keytar, I guess, because there are keys, and then you use a bow, so then it wouldn't be a tar, but you get the and it's a very beautiful instrument, and I wanted that for the theme for that game. So I asked on Facebook, and somebody connected me with a much younger person who was both into video games and playing this instrument, and we've been keeping in contact since then. And he's joined me to this Burning Man like festival where we played techno and folk music, like a secret location in the woods and stuff like. So I've become heavily reinvested, because folk music, Nordic folk music, and also Irish folk music was a big part of my childhood. So I'm returning to that, both with that game, but also just like I guess I have a new artist project, which is a lot more like that old Boards of Canada Warp, FX Twin, and Nordic folklore sounds and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's funny because I bought a bass guitar and I've just bought a skateboard, so it's obviously something in the air, isn't there? With people reconnect. It's maybe an age thing, because the kind of the midlife crisis or whatever. But
absolutely.
I don't know.
Also, like, you want to be able to say, what did you do during like the COVID year? And I'm trying to basically, I got to borrow the instrument you just saw. I got to borrow that just very recently. And I just started playing it, but I just wanted to like shoehorn in just, saying that, oh, well, I started learning that instrument. I think it's a nice thing to be able to say to, at least to yourself, like, I didn't waste the whole of 2020.
Yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of the people in the group, there's quite a lot of sort of fairly proficient, experienced music producers in the group. Would you have any advice, or I know that you got into it because of your friend, but in terms of maybe even just some exercises that people could do to sort of begin composing, like, for example, I guess they could get a piece of video and they could just try and do some like live soundtracking for it. So have you got any kind of go-to, you saying the Spitfire stuff's good. Have you got any advice for anybody, Andreas?
Yeah, I mean, since I'm not super connected, like, I have yet to sort of show this game. I've had a few emails like, oh, we really like the music for this game, but it's like, I have yet to put myself out there and get, hopefully some more work and stuff. But as far as approaching it from just musical standpoint, then if you are long, like, we were talking about it, like, if that's what you long to do, then it's probably right. If you think it's just like, oh, I should probably do something like that, it never becomes as good as if you're really dying to do it. I've been thinking back on, delving into deep houses. Like, I love deep house, but I wasn't dying to do that. I did it because, the jazzy music was out of fashion. And I'm still proud of some of the deep house tracks that I did, but it's, for me, past 5 years or so has been about just doing artist stuff that I completely love. Folk music and electronic music, nothing to do even with the jazzy stuff. Even though I love jazzy, like, I love jazz and play jazz, I just wanted to do something else that I felt in my heart. And it's the same with this video game stuff. It's just like so much of my personality in there. Having said that, so I would say just look for if you're curious about this kind of stuff, then think about, what kind of films do I like? What kind of video games do I enjoy? What can I put in there that's, me? I think that's a good place to start. And I, while composing, because I haven't got so much footage for the fantasy game yet, then I've just took other games that I enjoy, which are also in like a cold, winter landscape, and has like Norse mythology, just, or even games that I don't really care for that much, but look really good, but just like striking images of that vibe, and it's just having that while composing really helps bring out that. So, and I would just say, whether you're like, even if you don't want to do this at all, like, try to compose professionally or something like that, I think I wish I would have sooner tried composing for moving images, because that does something to your brain. Like that's something completely new. Like if you really try to feel the what's happening in the images, then that's something that's been kind of mind-blowing for me, and just open new doors in terms of how I compose or like write artist stuff as well. So I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah, just find something you like about it and try it.
Yeah, it's good to have your perspective, Andreas, definitely. Yeah, because obviously the idea of this session was obviously demonstrating some composing, but also talking about, how that can connect with people's kind of, because obviously you come from a sort of, you were involved in electronic music. So I think you're one of the few people I know who's made this jump. I mean, obviously you've got people like Fotek, do you know what I mean? But, he went to LA, and I guess that's probably why James Blake's in LA as well, I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean,
interesting.
I don't know them and I haven't asked them, but it's like, I think if you're in electronic music and all of a sudden deciding to go more down this route, I think for most of them probably they've had this in the back of their mind earlier, not just like, oh, gigs are not as many as they used to, I'm gonna become a composer. I don't think it would probably work like that. But again, I'd encourage anyone to just try it out, because it kind of opens your musical mind, at least.
Yeah, I've found it really interesting, Andreas, just to see you create that stuff live. And yeah, so do you want to show the resolution then, Andreas?
And I'm thinking,
sorry to butt in with the questions, by the way.
No, I would probably just keep playing it from the QuickTime. That would probably be the, or no, I changed my mind, because that's even less. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take all of what we just did and mute it and put on the channels that are actually the ones that I've worked on, like fine-tuned and adjusted. And let's see, so that would be all of these. And also there was something down here. Where is that?
And yeah, I just want to say to the group, there'll be a chance to ask some questions at the end. So, just feel free to start, either fire them in the chat or have a think, and you can speak to Andreas, personally. It's totally fine. So it's quite nice if it's not just me and him talking. So feel free at the end if you want to ask any questions, or if you've got anything. I know Jan, like, was a, sort of big fan of your Swell Session stuff. So, there might be a question there.
Yeah, feel free to ask me also about anything.
Yeah.
Not just like this stuff. And let's see if it works now.
Oh, Peeler. Just because you took out Komarov doesn't mean you get the rest of the day off. Let's get going. We should be able to end this silly war now.
General Makbar, on behalf of the Space Force, I offer our complete and total surrender.
Surrender, huh? I usually prefer annihilation. Easier to deal with prisoners of war when there are none.
Remember our deal, General.
Might I suggest just stranding us on an island?
You mean like a socialist reservation? Well, at least that would stop your crazy ideas from interfering with the free market.
So that was how the remains of the Space Force, stripped of all advanced technology, found themselves quarantined on a remote socialist reservation. Meanwhile, good old-fashioned dog-eat-dog capitalism was allowed to overrun New Earth. And to be fair, the consortium lasted a good few decades before finally imploding. Generations later, on the long-forgotten island of this looks like a good spot, a young, hopeful engineer assembles a working two-stage rocket and looks to the stars. But that, my friends, is but the short beginning of humanity's long journey deeper into.
Nice one, Andreas. Yeah, wow. Yeah, so sorry if I, kind of interrupted your creative flow of the composing stuff, but we're normally trying to do sort of 2.5 hours in the session, so we would have been here probably till midnight maybe if we'd kept.
Like when you prepare, you never know how long it's going to be. But I felt myself that was about the right time, so that's why I asked.
Yeah. No, totally awesome. So there's some questions for you. If anyone wants to speak, Jan, you were going to ask Andreas something, a Swedish perspective, I believe. Jan?
Yeah. Hi. Hey. So I grew up, I think, during the same time in Sweden as you did. And I guess my question is, how much benefit did you have of musikskola and other kind of education when it comes to music theory and being musical, and how much was just something you picked up on your own?
No, it's something that we often talk about, like when you hear a Swedish artist getting interviewed and stuff, like the education and the amount of, like basically I grew up here on this island outside Gothenburg, and whatever instrument I wanted to try, I could try if I wanted to. And it was, like I'm sure you know, it's called Kommunala Musikskolan. Just you're encouraged to do something, and I've known that's great, and I've been proud of that. But it's just when I was in London, I think around 2003, when everything was happening, I was befriending some of the Broken Beats guys, and like and it was just so nice to be able to just talk to them. If they liked your record, then you could ask like, let's make a song together, and I did. And I talked to one of them that had quite a similar background, and he grew up in Essex and stuff like that, and had played a classical instrument, and then just another his friend that's also like and I won't name them because I don't know if they want that, but he came over and we talked about just our backgrounds, and he said something like, yeah, I would have loved to play the drums when I was a kid, but it's just like there were some other kids and they were bigger than me, and I went to like a public school in a not so great area, and I couldn't kick the biggest guy's ass, so I couldn't play drums, and that was that, and then he had met somebody when he was an adult who had a sampler, and he was like, oh, let me borrow that, and then he became a producer. But it's just such a vast difference in opportunity. So that made me really aware of that is just so I think in Sweden there's a lot of good music from Sweden in all kinds of fields, and I think the education system has been a big part of that, for sure. And
I agree.
Another important, like with electronic music, an important key factor that I hear mentioned a lot is that there was actually a radio show on Swedish radio which was similar to Jas Peterson or John Peel or something like that, and it was just called Music Journal Dance, and it was this one guy called Kalle Darnov, maybe you know him, and
yes, I know Kalle.
As a 15-year-old, I couldn't go to raves. And the electronic music I knew was some trance cassette that my friend gave me. And then all of a sudden there's this guy. Well, he went and interviewed, told like, this is drum and bass, you should listen to that. I was like, oh, drum and bass. So I think a whole generation of electronic producers from Sweden had like the best education you could have through this hour every week, and it's like getting to hear about Daft Punk before they even released their first album, and this guy telling you like, these guys are gonna blow up, and they did. So I feel really happy about that, and I think I would probably still be making trance if if it wasn't for that guy. So
hey.
You still are, Andreas. You just realised.
It's just transpired the name. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, so has anyone else got any questions for Andreas? Michael, you had a question that was a programming style question, didn't you?
Yeah, thanks, Andreas. That was fascinating to watch your process there. This is like a really, really embarrassingly geeky question, but I have to ask because in the credits there, you had Matt Evans down as doing something. And I remember his name from, when I was a kid and I had an Amiga, and he was one of the journalists who used to write. He was quite key in one of the magazines, as I recall. So what was was his name there just like as a retro reference, or did he actually do something on that game?
I'm not sure. And I'm going to check. What do you, I'm not sure.
AFF and then Evans.
Yeah, Evans. Yeah, it was in the credits, quite early on in the credits.
Yeah.
When the credits rolled at the end.
Minister of Environment. So
yeah.
Then these are all kind of tongue-in-cheek names, like I'm Space Force Orchestra and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
So, but I know that Carl, the programmer, he outsourced some of the environmental work, like what do you call, like interior design, like it's just like 3D modeling for like spaceships and stuff like that. Oh,
Yeah.
and so that would be that person, and I don't know Math Evans from before, so I don't know if it's the same Math Evans, but I mean it's quite unusual.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah.
Could be.
Well, it was always spelt with those two Fs, yeah, as though
It probably
almost
must
as though that
be
wasn't his
person.
real name, but he spelt it like that.
So if he does,
Probably wasn't a real person, yeah. Do you know the reason why I remember him? I've kind of got to tell you this story. It's a bit self-indulgent, but I always remember buying this magazine as a kid, and there was like one issue that was all about electronic music, and this is when I had no clue about any of this, like how do you make electronic music. But they were talking about the Korg wave station, and this guy Matt Evans had been in. I think he'd reviewed it or something, or checked one out, and was so impressed that he'd bought it himself, and they were like massively bigging it up. And I'd never heard of anything like that before, but that always lodged in my mind. And so a few years later, when I went to university and had a bit of money in my bank account, I managed to find a secondhand Korg wave station, which was my first ever synthesizer, and that was my entry into doing electronic music, back in the late 90s. So his name is has always just stuck in my mind, I think, for that reason.
Yeah, I will find out if it's the same Matt Evans or if it's just somebody else.
Yeah, it happens to happen.
I think.
Yeah. So, does anyone else have any questions for Andreas? Okay, Darren's asked quite a big one actually here. Darren Sutton from Australia. So it's really nice to have people live in the session from Australia who've got up really early. Extra points for the dedication. What was the overall balance between the use of outboard synths, Rev 2, etc., versus the more orchestral and organic sounding patches, BBC Orchestra, etc., as it sounds like a fairly even mix between them? Did it end up as balanced as you had planned it, or did the visual inspiration lead you more towards one of these electronic versus organic sounds more than you expected?
That's a good question, and it's from the beginning the game wasn't as cinematic. Like all the cutscenes and stuff came later. So basically, I had fulfilled my contract by just doing the gameplay music, and I had to renegotiate everything in order to, like, do the orchestral stuff or like the cinematic cutscenes. But even like, because I didn't have an orchestral library, and I started doing cutscene music, and I was like, yeah, it's gonna be cool. I'm gonna use only the 80s synths and stuff. And then I went back to those films and watching them, like the soundtracks for, and it's, well, if you take Vangelis and Blade Runner, yeah, it's probably all synths, but it's just like having synth strings, and especially since I had also the Russian folk music elements, just felt so much better to have something to tie it all together, like just cinematic orchestra sounds. So the planning was to just have like synth stuff and pretty much no libraries, and it ended up, I would say, 50-50. But there, for example, it's also like different story branches in the game. Like one will turn completely ambient when the supercomputer becomes, like, we call it like a higher intelligence. Then she's just like throwing out like philosophical conundrums, and then I just got some really drony Brian Eno stuff in the background. Whereas when the German scientist starts like cloning himself and making a technocratic society of only clones looking like himself, and we were going towards the Blimschen ending, then I started making like slow Berghain kind of stuff. So it depended also a lot of on what story branch it was, and I tried to make them really different. But it was so nice to have like the orchestral stuff to tie it all together, and also like when Bill Nye is talking, to have those tremolo strings playing. It was just something that I'm really glad I took that direction.
Yeah, thanks, Andreas. I've got a question for you, Andreas. Right, how have you built up your skills over the years to be able to be, because you're basically interpreting stuff. You're talking about all these different types of music that you've made in the game. What do you credit that diversity, and how would you kind of encourage, how could you recommend other people to sort of develop their skills, their palette, to be able to make slow Berghain techno and traditional Russian music, or try to?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, some musical training helps, especially if you is like, okay, I'm gonna make some Russian folk music, then you have to listen to some Russian folk music, and then having gone to music school, and then having played a song by the Swedish jazz pianist Jan Johansson, who made some folky piano jazz records. One was called Jazz in Russian or something like that. Then, having already played that, then I kind of understood what was going on, and I could study how to, I mean, if you have no musical training whatsoever, that's going to take a while. And I didn't know Russian folk music before making this game. I still don't know Russian folk music, but I could fake some because I have a clue what's going on. So, but I think this game just happened to be a lot of what I enjoy, like some folk music, some 80s, and same with the programmer. Like, he made a game that consists of all the things that he's lived through. I was telling him, like, if some kids from the 90s were going to make this game, they would have made a totally different game, because they didn't experience that. They could have been a really cool game from another perspective. But so with this game, what I'm saying is that it was like it was tailor-made for everything that I know how to do. And I got to choose that, okay, I've lived 10 years in Berlin close to Berghain, so I can put some Berghain stuff in there. But once again, like, I would encourage someone then to, like, because everybody's got their things that they like, musically trained or not, that you have things that you soaked up over the years. And just like, for example, if I was gonna make a class that was a running thing out of this, then I might say, well, gather 5 musical styles or elements or things that you like about music. Take some images, moving images that you like, try to incorporate those 5 things into whatever you're composing. That could be an exercise that you make for yourself. But as far as studying something completely new and just trying to get a grasp of that, that's something I wouldn't do either, unless I had to because of this assignment. But put a don't set the bar too high. I'm just going to try it out.
But that's an interesting point you're making there, Andreas, that is like, without maybe a task or a sort of target, then people might not actually ever evolve,
Yeah, but you can give them to yourself. I have a friend who I lived for the past 2 years in Berlin, and he moved back to Sweden and has been making music. He found a cool studio, but he hasn't really been inspired. Then I just asked him, like, what if I tell you, give you some, like, an exercise, like make some slow disco, but with this and that, just music that I would be interested in hearing him do. And something he could have done for himself, but much easier if somebody else asks you to. That could be something if you know each other in the group. It's something that I've done with friends before. It's like checking in with each other, and I guess that's what you're helping with also with mentoring. Is just like, but just give each other nudges and assignments, or something you can do for yourself also. Like if I think like the game I'm composing for now, it doesn't really involve any super bombastic orchestral pieces, but it's something that I want to learn how to do, and also that would look good in my portfolio. So right now I'm composing something that's not really for anything, but it's an assignment I gave for myself because I think it's a good thing to do. So yeah.
Yeah, no, thanks, Andreas. Yeah, I mean, I'm sort of, we're all trying to encourage each other, and yeah, it seems to work really well to like connect people. Like, so, we've got a big group, but then I've paired people up recently, and they're being kind of A&R, they're swapping roles between being A&R and the producer. So kind of production buddies, for want of a better word. And
That's
seems
exactly
to
what
really
I was
work,
That's wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. So Michael's asked, is creating music an art or a science?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'm not sure. Well, I guess there's science to it, and it's an art, but it's it's passion, I guess. I'm It depends on what kind of music you're doing, artsy or sciencey, and how you approach it. But it's just like, for me personally, I think passion is what drives it, which is kind of a bummer sometimes, because sometimes you really don't have passion, and then you have to rely on the art or science education that you've had, or like the tricks you have up your sleeve, or like the sort of the workmanship of it. But that rarely becomes anything interesting.
Sounds like you're talking about remixing, Andreas. Remixing for money. Yeah. So Drew, apologies. Drew had it. This hand up thing. Then is this something new? Is this a new feature or something?
No, I think it's been there a while.
Wow, you're the first person that's ever used it in a session, Drew. That's amazing.
I'm so polite. So polite.
Yeah, Drew, so you've got a question for Andreas?
Well, I mean, it was actually like just a comment on what you were asking Andreas, in a way, about how to like develop the sort of skills, because I think what struck me with like a lot of what you were saying was all about the storytelling, basically the storyline, and developing it and using the music to sort of enhance that storytelling. And that's, I mean, in some ways, that's why I feel like music has kind of always been about to me, is like you're almost trying to create an atmosphere, sort of evoking some sort of, feeling, or, like a, like taking somebody on a journey, as it were. And that kind of, so that translates a lot, I think, between just like, kind of any sort of music. Like if you're doing a mix, even you're sort of like telling a story throughout a whole mix. And so translating that into the filmmaking, I think, is should be quite transferable in a way.
It is, and I completely agree. And it's about channeling something. The big difference here, you're like, if I make an artist album or something, then that music has the lead role, and here you're the supporting actor. You're embedding the story in sounds. You can take the lead role sometimes, of course, but And I think in this project I had so much freedom, but like normally composing for like a British drama or something like that, I imagine that the director will come back time and time again, be just like doing too much, like stay in the background. So that, I would say you're totally right, and that's the thing that can be a challenge while transferring from making artist music to this kind of like composing for things, would be to learn how to be supportive, rather than grabbing attention directly. Yeah.
Yeah, that can also probably be relatable to, DJing and producing dance music as well, because, if you want to have a long career, make something that's not going to offend people, right? It might not be the most exciting career, but and same with DJing. It's like, clearing a floor is not nice,
No, that's in some parties that you play as a DJ, you're asked to take the risks and like this project would be like that kind of party where everybody, when you walk in the door, is like everybody's in tune and you can play whatever you want. This was that project, but another, like composing for adverts is just like, no, please, like we can't have a violin because people will feel guilty about the environment. That I've heard that exact phrase.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I tried to do some stuff for a library, and the feedback I got was like, it was almost like there's not enough music there for us to comment on, or something like that. And I was just like, well, there is music, you know what I mean? I was like, what? And I think they just basically wanted a fully finished, proper track for them to then say yes or no to. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that amount of work unless I know something. You know what I mean? Like, what? So I think that's the problem with writing for libraries, and I mean, obviously you're composing for a reason, aren't you, Andreas? You've got an actual project.
Yeah.
But I think having to do stuff on spec is quite difficult. You know what I mean? Like if they can just say no, you know what I mean?
Trying to avoid, I mean, the libraries and all of that, it's there, but you're, like you say, I get the impressions that you're asked to do a lot to maybe get something, and as long as I can find projects like this that will actually be something that's for something like commissioned work, then that's probably more interesting. At least I don't know if it's more well paid in the end, but
Yeah, I guess to do the library stuff or to do the spec stuff, you have to be a really hard worker, and B, you have to leave your ego at the door, because ultimately you have to accept the possibility of rejection, which is probably what stops me going further into that, because I'm like, I don't want to make music that people turn down, but at the same time, it's not that easy to make money from being a dance music DJ right now, is it? You know what I mean?
Well, but it's like with artist stuff and DJ stuff, it's a lot about finding your formula, and once you have it, then it might not be inspiring all the time, but you know what you're doing. It's like, and in that sense, if you come back in 10 years, then I can probably give a more thorough masterclass in that sense. But that's what I think was interesting for you, is like, I'm someone like you who's trying to do something new and just starting.
Yeah. You did an almighty pivot, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So has anyone else got any questions for Andreas? I think we should probably call end the session soon, but has anyone got anything burning they want to ask? Feel free. Any more Swedish questions from the Swedes in the group? No? Okay. Well, I think that calls the evening to a close then. So big thanks to you, Andreas. Have you got anything else you want to say, Andreas?
So another question: how long did the project take? And I can answer that briefly. It was it started like 2.5 years ago, but I didn't work full time. Like there was a long time that I didn't work on it, but I think I worked from, so I would say 1 year full time, like full time. So and it was in the end more than 4 hours of unique music. So it was like two full lengths if there was music all the time. So it's just a ridiculous amount of music, but you know, I enjoyed it a lot. So
But it was demanding, wasn't it? Because I spoke to you after you'd completed it, and you were very tired, weren't you?
yeah, it was very exhausting, but in a good way, yes. But
It's like doing an album, isn't it? Where after you do the album, you can kind of crash a bit, you know.
But it's a passion project. I mean, I would still do my best if I composed for another game, but this was something where, you know, we just came up with new ideas all the time. And, you know, and even like, oh, there's no more budget to do voices for these new characters, and we did that ourselves, and you know, had a laugh about it. So it's you know, it's one of those kind of projects.
I mean, what an amazing thing. I mean, it's a perfect start to get to work with someone that you know and to have so much input on the game, Andreas. I mean, do you not think you could have the possibility from that to, because you did way more than just composing.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be part of an actual development team, and I guess I'm becoming that with this project. But I'm also like, this is also tricky because it's a childhood friend, but we didn't really speak since we were 15. So we don't really know each other that well. So we're both being extremely polite, like, you know.
You're Swedish.
No, I'm not counting myself as a co-developer, and I'm not, you know.
Ah, yeah, right. So you mean you're not being British and being like, that's my credit.
You know, I'm getting all the credit, but it's just like he would have to ask me, you know, I wouldn't ask him to become like a full-time partner or something like that in doing games together. But I would really love to be part of, you know, designing games as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like you're well on the road to it. I just think, it sounds like you had such a creative role in it, Andreas, that, you're not just composing, are you? So, there's probably more employment opportunities for you if you can diversify beyond just doing the music, like officially,
Yeah, I think whatever, it's like everything creative, whatever comes natural, that sense.
Mm. Yeah, I'm just trying to get a little bit of like careers advice in there, I'm joking. But yeah, so yeah, I mean, anyone else got anything they want to ask Andreas, or any burning questions? Thanks, Mikhail, for your question. But yeah, I mean, really great to have you with us, Andreas, and thanks for sharing your creative process and really getting deep into how you created the soundtrack.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a pleasure, for sure. And if anyone has anything they want to ask me after, then just whatever, like even like nerdy stuff about, please, where can I get the Hans Zimmer guitars, or stuff like that, I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I mean, what I can say, always say to people is, on the Discord we've got a guest masterclass section. So if anyone wants to pop their questions in, if there's anything, or anything they want to ask Andreas about, I can relay that on to Andreas. And there's no such thing as a stupid question. So just ask anything, really.
Yeah.
Yeah. So big thanks. Thanks everyone for being involved and for showing up tonight. And thank you, Andreas, for, my mind's racing with ideas just from, because, it's exciting, isn't it? I'm sure everyone else feels like in the group, we all know how to do what we know how to do, but doing something different is quite exciting,
Sure. And that's something that I would like, again, say that you feel like doing something different, give yourself a little bit of time just to try it out.
Yeah,
I'm really happy I've explored this, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, big shouts everyone. The archive will be up tomorrow, I think. So if anyone wants to rewatch it, or if you missed the beginning or whatever. And thank you, Andreas. I'll send you a Facebook message or something afterwards, or we can talk. So is that cool?